and Personnel Committee to order the meeting for May. Was it properly posted? Cheryl,
Yes, Mr. Chair, it was, with the
Thank you.
22-point agenda.
thank you. And we do have a 22-point agenda. I will accept a motion to approve that agenda. Mr. Cooey, seconded by Mr. Manning. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We have an agenda. Takes us to, well, I'll make a couple changes in the agenda while I'm there. We're going to move, see, what number was that? Number 14? Up in the agenda after public comment and previous minutes. And then I have a request from Tricia Clements, who must leave here by 6 o'clock, to bring, which number was it, Tricia? 18. So after approval of previous minutes, public comment, then we will take items 14 and 18. Okay. I'm sorry, Derek, I thought that was the borrowing. Maybe. Thank you. And where would that one be? 15, and I've already moved 14. I meant to move number 15. I spoke out of turn. 15 and 18 we will move, okay? Glad I got through that. Mr. Carroll, you look puzzled.
Well, I must have opened the wrong agenda. Number 19 is on mine is reclassification of the health services manager.
Do you have a 23-point agenda or 22?
23.
22. So in the committee info folder should be the correct agenda.
Okay. All right. Public comment. Do we have anyone that wants to make a public comment? Anyone want to step aside from the committee and make a public comment? I'll even allow that. Hearing none, we'll move on to the previous minutes. Now, I think we've got, probably have previous minutes from our April, there are 2 meetings in April, I believe. And I will ask for comments on any minutes involving April meetings. Any changes, recommendations, conclusions? If not, I'm going to declare those approved as published. And now that takes us down to item number 15. Discussion and possible action, taxable status for radio tower project borrowing and resolution approving radio tower contract. And I see our friend Carol is here all the way from Brookfield. And this is an item that has to do with our tower project, and we discovered that we have a question that we want to put before you concerning taxable versus non-taxable. And I think I'm going to let Carol explain this to you. Please, Carol.
Okay, thank you. I do have basically a 2-page summary. I don't know if you would like, I do have hard copies of it if anybody would like it. So let me know. You can, if that's something you're interested in. Otherwise,
It should be in their package.
it's in their packet. Okay. All right, perfect. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is we've been preparing the county to go into the municipal bond market to access the $8.1 million for the radio tower project. We went through the steps required under the state law, which is the county adopted the initial resolution, and then the next step will be the county adopting another resolution that will lock in the interest rates, and that will occur on May 16th. But whenever we do a borrowing, we also have to comply with federal law. We normally don't have this conversation, even though it applies to every borrowing that the county does. But this is a little bit different, and it's basically driven by the purpose that you're doing the borrowing for. Whenever the county borrows for its projects, those borrowings are considered to be tax exempt. And what that means is the investor is getting the interest check every 6 months, and he does not need to pay federal taxes on that. So that's what's meant by tax exempt. It's tax exempt to the investor. Because the investor does not pay federal taxes, the interest rate that the county is borrowing at is slightly lower because of that, okay? So now we're going to talk about the radio tower project in particular. So in order to be considered a project eligible to be financed with these type of rates, the lower rates, we're going to call them the tax exempt rates, the projects have to be serving the public and not serving any private purpose. Okay, private purpose means that there's either one individual or one company that could benefit from that project. Okay, so that's called the federal arbitrage rules. Okay, there can't be some benefit, some public, as long as the public has access to the projects, no problem. But if there's any hint that there could be a private benefit somewhere, then we have to dig into certain subjects. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So the tower, as a project, is considered a public purpose. Obviously, it's for emergency services, right? So that is not a problem. So we normally would prepare the financing with the tax exempt interest rates, but now we have to consider one other topic, and that is, could there be any revenues generated by, for example, cell tower leases? Okay, cell tower leases means you have a private company that is coming to the county saying that I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars in order to put our cell towers right on your equipment. Well, that's considered a private purpose. That's where we get a little bit sticky here about being able to say yes or no to that. It would be nice to have the revenue, right? Because getting the revenue means that it goes into the general fund. However, it causes a problem with maintaining the tax exempt status of the bonds.
Carol, I'm
So-
going to interrupt you just 1 minute. Do we have anyone who can speak to the revenue potential?
I can.
Okay, Barb, please, Barb Scott, MIS Director.
So there is a small potential, but we don't have any realized revenues at this point. But once Carol had sent us the amount of difference, at this point, I can't guarantee you $1 million. So I don't think that it would benefit the county
The million is the difference in
in the cost of the bond.
interest.
Yeah. And to my understanding, even if there were maintenance costs that were reimbursed by other entities, they would come beneath, we would anticipate the cost of, that we could receive and not in the non-taxable bonds.
Okay, John Hokerman and I did some back of the envelope type computation, and we came up with over the period of the bond, like 800,000 maybe potentially.
Mhm.
This is all,
I think what we heard from Phil
Speculation.
earlier today is that over the, and Carol, correct me if I'm wrong, I think over the term of the bond, the 15 years, that we could average approximately $50,000 a year in
think-
income.
I think that's a good number to keep in our minds right now.
Mhm.
What determines that number is when on May 15th, when we know what the actual principal and interest payments will be for the 15-year life of the bond issue. Then we take, the calculation is to take 10% of that number of the total principal and interest. And whatever revenue that the county would receive over that 15-year period has to be present valued, and it can't exceed that 10% number. So that 10% number, I just did a rough calculation based on the estimates we're using, and it looks like if you received about $50,000 a year for the 15-year period each and every year, you would be within that 10% of the debt service over the 15 years. So that's kind of just a target, and you could still do it and keep the tax exempt feature. If you didn't, okay, and if you said, no, we think we're gonna get more revenue than that, and we had to do a taxable bond issue, which means you're at higher interest rates. Okay, taxable bond issue is anywhere from 1.5% to 2% higher interest rate. That in itself is $1 million more interest cost on the bond issue. So you kind of want to make sure that if you're going to know you're going to lock yourself into $1 million more of debt service, that you're definitely going to have something to offset that.
yes, Mr. Carroll? Question.
So I understand, very roughly, of course, we're around 50 grand a year potential, even though there's been no official or contact on it, roughly. Whereas the delta over the 15 years in the interest rates is 75 grand. So I don't know, it doesn't seem like, doesn't seem like a very assured chance of beating that spread, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. if
Go
I
ahead,
could,
Mr.
I'll
Hokeman.
Just give you my 2 cents worth, and I won't speak for Derek or for Barb, but my opinion, the trade-off of spending $1.1 million more in interest payments over the course of 15 years on that loan, we get more flexibility that way. We could accept some of that revenue over the amount what Carol is talking about, but we're not getting any of that right now. So my personal recommendation is that you go with the taxable or the tax exempt bonding. 2 things. Number one is, and we should be tracking any revenue that we get in. We should be doing that anyhow, but that is crucial on a tax exempt bond, because if we go over that threshold that Carol's talking about, there could be some severe penalties to the county. So we think that the trade-off of, yes, you could potentially get additional revenue over those amounts, but is that worth $1.1 million over the course of 15 years? And then the other point, and Carol, correct me if I'm wrong, is with the tax exempt bond, worst case scenario, after 9 years, we could potentially pay that off. Is that correct?
You can, that's correct. There will be a prepayment feature on the bonds, and with the prepayment feature, you have 2 choices. You can pay off some or all of the bonds, or you could refinance them with a taxable issue at that time.
Right, and that's
over
the
the
point.
next maybe 6 years.
And that's the point that I was gonna make, that we
Mhm.
could refinance it. We
Right.
could not do that prior to 9 years.
Right.
But we could, if we find that there's a potential of a lot of revenue out there, after 9 years, we could refinance and go with the taxable bond
Correct.
or pay it off.
Right.
Mr. Carroll?
That sounds good, but who knows what the market will be for cell tower real estate in 9 years? We have no idea.
So what are you favoring, sir?
I'm favoring the tax exempt again, because we don't know what we can get. And if we can get up to 50,000 a year, if there is a market at all, we can at least get that.
It's just, I'm gonna ask Derek Kalish to comment on tracking this and whether or not that's gonna be a problem.
Yeah, I don't think tracking it is going to be an issue. We have a chart of accounts that can fully accommodate revenues of all types. So the only caveat with tracking that is that the county treasurer, county clerk, and then whoever is receiving those payments stays in very close communication to make sure we're tracking those, and that throughout the 15 years that we're keeping very good records of that. It's possible to do that. I'm not worried that we're going to do that, but it will require some very close tracking by a few different individuals, probably MIS at some point too, just to make sure that the revenues are coming in clearly defined as tower rental revenue. So they're assigned to the specific revenue tracking account number, GL number, that's going to live with that throughout the life of the bond. So it's possible to do that. I'm personally in favor of the tax exempt way forward, and we can, as long as we all work together, can make it happen.
Well, it'll be your fault if we go over, Derek, so,
Our challenge accepted.
okay. I'll entertain a motion. Are we ready for a motion? I think we are.
One more question, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Barb, have the towers been designed for additional antenna use?
We can take additional antennas, but we have no interest at this time from other outside entities.
okay. Motion. Tax exempt. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. We direct Carol Worth of Public Finance Professionals to go ahead with the tax exempt version. Okay. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol, for,
By May 16th, I'll be back with the results.
it's been a long day for you, I know, so,
It's okay. It was a very productive day. We're good.
yes, okay, thank you. All right. Doing what I said I'd do, we're going to take up, Chris Clements has a request to move, it was 18, agenda item 18, reclassification of behavioral health services manager.
That's correct.
Okay. Trish, go ahead.
So our behavioral health unit comprises of 20 individuals and 9 different programs. We have one manager that supervises all of that. The manager has 2 roles. One is to supervise the unit, ensure we're in compliance with federal grants, state grants, contracts, overseeing all the employees. The second part is to provide clinical supervision that is required of some of the employees and some of the programs. I'm making a recommendation that we reclass this position a step down and have the manager only do the first tasks, not do the clinical supervision piece. And we would contract out the clinical supervision piece. So it would be a cost savings.
Did I hear you right? You're asking to go down in classification? Wow,
Asking to
okay,
go down.
I don't want to, well, that's a rare recommendation, a rare request. Any questions from the committee, Mr. Carroll?
The contracted services, that would be covered how?
So we have a CCS supervisor position that we would eliminate, and those funds would be used to cover the contracted services.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a motion?
I so move.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Williamson, and seconded by Mark Coe. All those in favor of this recommendation signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you, Trish. Okay, we'll get back to the regular order now. And takes us up to number 6 on the agenda, interview and selection process for HR director. And I'm going to call on interim administrator John Holcomer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and keep this brief, but just inform the committee that 2 weeks ago, after Cheryl had gone through the applications and determined which individuals we would interview, there was a slate of 3 people. One was 2 weeks ago today, and then 2 of them 2 days later on the Friday. The individual that was to be interviewed on Wednesday contacted Cheryl and said that she had accepted a different position and she was no longer interested in the position here in Richland County. 2 days later, we had two interviews scheduled. The first person came, did a great job. We were very interested in her. We were doing a little bit more checking. The second person did not show up because she indicated that after further review that the salary wasn't really what she was looking for. She was looking for something higher than that. So, I contacted references. I did some more background work on the person that we did interview, who was a county human resources director. I told her that I would be contacting references, and I started doing references and background checks, and got glowing reports and just tremendous feedback on those. We agreed that we would talk again over the weekend. I didn't hear anything over the weekend. And late yesterday afternoon, we finally had another conversation, and she decided for 2 reasons. Number one, for the commute. It was a little over an hour commute. And secondly, for the pay, that she was withdrawing from consideration. So at this point, we have no one that we have interviewed that we're looking at. We went through all the other applications that we received from the county, and we felt that none of those candidates met enough of the qualifications that we were looking for in this round. So we have re-advertised to this point in locations where it has not cost the county any money to re-advertise. And we're going to see what additional applications come in, if any. And I'm also going to reach out to the person who declined the interview because of the salary issue. Because one thing that happened is, in the ad that went out earlier on, it talked about the hourly rate. It didn't talk about the range. So if we move from what was, if we're not saying that we have to do this, but if the county were willing to move from what was advertised to step 4, it's not quite $4,000 increase. And I'm not certain if that $4,000 will make the difference for the individual or not, but I will reach out to her and have that conversation.
John, could you put some more numbers with that? What would
I
start
think at the hourly rate, it was 38 something an hour, was approximately $79,000 a year. And if we were to move to step 4, it was about 83.5, I believe. Derek's nodding his head. So that's where we are at right now. The other thing, and I talked to the panel that did the screening this morning, and I said one thing we found over the years when we do recruitments for county administrator is usually they have a they have somewhat of a background in finance or they have a background in human resources. So I think we should keep that in mind too, as we're moving along the process to bring a new administrator to the county. That could make a difference. I'm not saying that we should stop the recruitment. I think we should continue that process, but that is where we are at right now.
Okay, thank you. Sounds like a reasonable approach to me. What think you, members of the committee?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Carroll?
I was just curious if we know which of the advertising avenues drew these candidates and whether the second round advertising would be go to one of those same avenues.
So I believe two of them came from either the website or the Shopping News Observer. The other one maybe was the Wisconsin Counties Association, although we didn't ask where she came from. So we have advertised it. We have advertised now on the Wisconsin Counties Association again for 1 month and put it on the website until filled. And then did add the wage range on the website as well.
And I would just add, we are going to check with the Wisconsin State Journal to see what the cost would be to advertise there. And I have a personal LinkedIn page, and some of the recruitment work that I do, I mentioned recruitment's on there, so I will include it on my LinkedIn page as well.
I have the time. Applicants for the administrator. Hey, well, UW campus maintenance expenditure. That one.
I will start out with that, and then perhaps, Derek has a few more things that he wants to mention. But there was an invoice that came to the county in late February. The invoice is slightly over $22,000 for some work on a pump at the maintenance gym at the Richland Center campus. And I think the main concern that Derek had, so this is already paid. The bill had to be paid. But I think Derek wanted the body to know that with the payment of this bill, we are approximately $7,100 over budgeted amount in this line item. So we wanted to bring that to the attention of the body. There's no action that's really required on this one because it was an invoice that had to be paid and is paid. But down on the agenda under financial, we'll also be talking about future UW campus expenses because we need to talk about where those dollars are coming from if we're already $7,100 in the red in this budget line for this year. So Derek, anything you wanted to add?
No, you covered most of it. It's just when the bill came through audit, it was pulled from audit because of the amount. And I believe that the thing, it says UW Platteville has expended their budget repairs for 2023. The other question I had is at the campus years ago, operations were such that there was, individuals in offices, and those individuals would field the bills to the county share or the campus or the university share because those bills were split between county and campus. And I don't know how that operation is now with the limited staff that's there. So that may also be something that we want to discuss further is for those bills coming forward, is there a process in place that we know those bills are coming directly to us? I know some do find their way to us. Mike Compton usually brings them from the education committee, but I just want to make sure that operations will continue that way or that we have a better grip on these bills coming through and that they're coming through to us through the appropriate channels. And again, with the fact that paying that bill did put that fund 32 over budget. So.
How much did Fund 32 have in it to begin with?
I think it was around 32 or 40,000. Let me look. See if I can pull it up quick. I don't know
I think we allocate 40,000.
Yeah, that amount has changed over the years.
I know it
It's
has.
gone down a little bit, so, let's see.
Okay.
So I can look, but
But,
yeah.
well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot,
okay.
but I did. I'm gonna put Mr. Williamson, don't pass that mic down yet. We do have an expense coming up at the campus. It's not on the agenda, but trees, we have 30 ash trees or 25 ash trees and 5 other species that are gonna have to be removed, so. Mr. Carroll?
Well, two things. First, this won't be the end of it. I mean, Steve and I did the walk, and they identified multiple things to us that, well, this is not working. This side of the building doesn't have this doesn't have that. So we need to get our hands around it. And secondly, I've never been clear on what's the difference between maintenance and capital improvement. Where's that line? If you switch out a pump, is that maintenance or is that capital improvement? So that line may have been fuzzy for years. I don't know, but
I think so,
yeah, that may be where some of this is coming from.
right? Yes.
And this is just a question, probably for
Mark,
Derek,
please.
but would it make sense to run all the bills through the county and go back to whatever entities in them buildings going forward?
There's, in my opinion, pros and cons to that. So, yeah, it was a lot easier when there was staff over there to actually call and describe the bills or give us a little more info. That infrastructure is not there as we know it. So it could be possible to do that. It requires some communication, obviously farther away, but it could work. Maybe.
Well, it has to work that way, I think.
I do too. I mean, we're uncertain of what's going on forward. I mean,
right.
to say the least, I would say. And it's our buildings and we manage them. So I think we need to see the bills, and whatever happens, then we charge them.
Is everyone clear on what, and I'm not, but what's happening at the campus? Okay.
Pretty much unclear, Mark.
At the last meeting that we had with the University of Wisconsin people, basically they said, we're not ready to throw in the towel yet. We think that we'd like to maintain the campus as a virtual learning center for at least a year, with the idea of, if certain things come to pass, perhaps we could go back to in-person classes. In the fall of 24. So it's kind of good news for those who really want to save the campus, but in another sense, it's another delay in deciding what we're going to do with the campus. And if something happens and it continues as a viable source of education for young people, then it should. But the expenses keep coming, marching on, and we've handled a lot of the things out at the campus. Clint Langreck was very skilled at wrapping those into the borrowing package, and we were able to do some roofs and other things out there, that deferred maintenance items. But 20,000, I thought it was for a boiler, but a pump, whatever it was.
It's a boiler pump is what it is.
Boiler pump. So these things are just, those buildings are 60+ years old. And
I mean, there's a list. If we pulled up the education list, we can see the list of stuff that's just that needs to be addressed. And I mean, in the short term, it's gonna take some money just to maintain. They're not really capital project, but there's capital projects that need to be done also. So I mean, I've been on that committee for well, since we restructured it. I mean, it used to be just extension, but it's gonna take some money. It's gonna take some, how well we manage that money per se, I guess, or how much we can get into borrowing and 'cause that's a fine line. I mean, when you go down, is it capital or is it maintenance?
Right.
Every person you talk to will tell you a different story, and it kind of goes to where they work. If they're in maintenance, they'll say, no, that's a capital expense because they don't want their budget used. And if they're not in maintenance, they'll say, no, that's a maintenance expense. So trying to figure that out will be interesting in itself, I would say. But there's a lot to do out there, and I guess in my opinion, we got to maintain what we have, but that budget's going to be blown more than what it is already, I would say, by the end of the year.
John, how come, you did a tour with Linda, did you not, this week?
It was a tour, I think it was a week ago already, and got into all the buildings, and, I could speak to that more at another time. That's not really on the agenda, but, there's a lot of maintenance that needs to be done out there. There's been a lot of deferred maintenance. I think, though, getting back to the billing, what I like about having the bills coming to the county is that there shouldn't be any delay in getting the bills. I think one of the worst things that could happen to us now is 3, 4, or 5 months down the road, we find out we have these bills that we're not aware of. And then secondly, I think one of the things that Chairman didn't mention is that we are expecting a addendum to the memorandum of understanding that should be here in less than 10 days. And I think we have to be prepared that we can respond to that addendum so that we know some of these questions that we currently don't know. There's a lot of different thoughts out there. So we need to really know what the commitment is from the UW system moving forward and how long their commitment is, because the county's got some decisions they're going to have to make sooner rather than later.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And yes, Mr. Manning.
Unclear on who ordered the work. Was there no bidding? It sounds like it's a big surprise when we got the bill, the amount it was. Well, seems out of whack.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Cooley.
What had happened is it failed, so we had to fix it in the middle of February. And Precision Controls, I think, does most of the work out there. So it was using this standard. I mean, we'd probably do the same thing here at the courthouse, I would assume. When we have something fail, we call X. I don't think it wasn't like we were bidding out to replace the pump failed. So that's why it had to be fixed.
And they're not like here where we try to have 3 on hand. So much deferred maintenance out there, but.
I think that pump was, it was like 50 years old. I mean, it wasn't, that's why the price of it, these pumps don't fail very often. You probably aren't going to keep one on the shelf, but that's where the problem, it all kind of happened in like February. If I remember right, it was February. So,
yeah. So
and Mr. Chairman, if I understand correctly, and a lot of that has to do with personnel at the campus moving on to do other things, so that I believe, if I'm correct, that the invoice originally went to UW Platteville, didn't come to the county. So that's part of what we need to clear up with the UW system as well.
Yeah, that was my only point, was to get it to Derek so that at least we're not getting charged interest or something on a bill that, or getting bad grace with somebody because we didn't pay a bill for 6 months.
Right.
So to add, I mean, Mr. Wendell's on there, but I don't know, like John said, it's truly not on the agenda, but I mean, at some time we need to come up with some ideas. I'm gonna have some next week, hopefully coming out of the property, buildings and grounds, whatever we're called, public works, to add to that addendum, but this would be one of them, would be the billing, I would assume. Sounds like everybody in this room is in favor of the lease, but I don't know if we can truly do anything with it here tonight because it's really not on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda, but our corp counsel is in attendance, so hear us, please.
You hear me okay?
Go ahead, Mr. Rendell.
Can you
Did you have a comment?
Hello, test.
Yes, you're on.
Okay. Um, so I have been tasked with updating the memorandum of agreement. The document that I'm working with, I wanted to be thorough, so it right now clocks in at a slender 46 pages. Because there are so many questions that remain unanswered, and I want to do what I can to make sure that we can answer those. Um, if anyone has any suggestions, feel free to just email those to me, and I can, include them or not. But I do obviously be bringing this document before the various relevant committees and the county board, if and when it comes to that. But it is going to depend on what they're willing to agree with also.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
You were just crystal clear in your comments, so as usual. It's a difficult situation, and it's not easy. Not easy. So I'm glad you're on top of it, because attorney to attorney. Okay.
Well, we'll see if I get a reply back this time around. I still haven't heard from Quinn.
Okay. Anyone else comment? I know we're a little bit off agenda, but all right. Well, we know the bill is there. We accepted it. We paid it, so that's where we are. We might want to look at when we put together our borrowing package for next year. We're going to have to list the things that we have to do. Thank you. Park Department moving under Fairgrounds Department. And Carla Doudna is here in attendance, so I think she would cover this for us. Carla?
It should have a light on the bottom. Turn on its light on the bottom. Nope.
This one's work.
Turn it.
So I'm here tonight, just, the committee and I, we've been discussing what the transition plan is going to be moving forward with budget time coming, so that we know what we need to start doing as far as putting together the parks and, the recycling and fairgrounds. So we're kind of just looking for some guidance from the Finance and Personnel Committee on are those still your wishes as it was agreed upon last year, that we would move forward with that transition, so that we're compiling the information that's going to be needed going forward for you.
Okay. Keep compiling. Anyone else have a comment or thought? No? Yes. John
If I
Pope.
could, it's one of these decisions that with the budget coming up, if we're going to be talking about departmental budgets, which we will be, we really know as staff, we need to know how you want us to move forward. So, my understanding is that this was pretty much a done deal, except for the board to take final action, the committee and the board to take final action. So, I would say that unless we hear something otherwise, that's how we're going to progress when we develop the budget.
Right.
And I think, just for clarification, there's only 2 positions. We're not looking to hire anybody in addition to what we already have. I think there was some misunderstanding or some miscommunication somewhere along the line, but it would still just be 2 people. So I just want to make sure that that's out there, so that there's clear understanding that we're not looking to hire anyone in addition to what we have.
Thank you. So thanks for that report, bringing us up to date on plans that we have made as a county board. So So we won't be surprised when things happen. Okay. Well,
Mr. Chair, I'll just ask the question. I know in the documentation that's coming forward tonight, it says that we're recommending that the committee approve the restructuring. I mean, if we don't take that action this evening, we really need to take it fairly soon for budget purposes.
okay, well, I didn't realize we had to have a motion, but we can do that. If anybody needs additional information or before you make a motion,
I'll make a motion.
all right. Mark Cooey, seconded by Mr. Gutschall.
Question, Chair.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at the draft org chart, so I wonder if Carla could explain how many of those boxes are actually people or they're just roles or
So for the org chart was put together at Administrator Langrick's request. So you would have one position, which would be the director position, would be over all of the fairgrounds, events, rental and camping, your parks, trails and camping, and your recycling. That would be one person. And then your coordinator that falls under your fair, that would be one person. So you would have two people. Ultimately, your director is over everything, and your fair coordinator would just solely be responsible for your fair operations.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So the groundskeeper would fall under the director position, but it would still stay under the fairgrounds. So we have that will stay in place. That's an LTE position. And then your mowing contractor that's under the parks, that would stay as well.
So no additional personnel though?
There wouldn't. So ultimately, what would happen is I would move out of the fair coordinator role into your director position. And then Christine Haiti, who is in our office clerical position, that would be restructured into the fair coordinator position. And that would be your two employees. Obviously, we have Buford Marshall, who is our groundskeeper. That would stay the same. And Mike Drake does our mowing for the parks. But there's no additional hiring. I mean, in the end, we'll have to hire someone new to take Christine's place because she's not going to stay on after this year, but it's not a creation of a brand new job. It's already there. It's just going to be restructured into what we need it to do.
Okay. Okay, I think we have a motion in a second. Manning, I believe, to go ahead with the proposal here of the organizational chart. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. East Hall update. Mr. Williamson.
Mr. Wendell's on there. I don't know. My goal is to, first of all, I wanted to bring it to this group, decide on what do we want to call our negotiation team. I've had a couple phone calls with Steve Board. They have 3 people on there. It's himself, board president, and their treasurer. I talked to Sean about it a little bit. He's on vacation this week. We've kind of talked about maybe Mr. Wendell, Mr. Hokumer, Mr. Marty, and myself possibly. I don't need to be on there, but my goal is to have a proposal to Buildings and Grounds next week and hopefully get it passed and then have it to full county board by next Tuesday or the following Tuesday, so that the school district would know. They have actually a school board meeting the night before our county board meeting. So if we get it through our committee, he can take it to his full school board the night before the county board meeting. So it may all fall into place, but it's going to take a little work. But so I guess just kind of trying to figure out what you guys as a committee want as far as, we're not going to be able to negotiate much. I think we've got an idea, some examples, with a purchase price possibly with rental for a year, with the idea in case this totally flopped for them, they're not stuck with the building. The county would take the rental money, and with the idea we would probably, if everybody's in favor, take it off the price. So after a year of rental, we would look at the lease agreement again. If they're still not quite feeling that they want to finish the purchase, then we would go with probably another year lease. Up in the air right now, but we have no real solid numbers, but we want to, I'd like to be there by next Thursday of some type of an offer that I can bring to the project.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. And Mr. Carroll has a look of puzzlement and,
Not puzzlement.
well, I agree. This is really the first blush, the first time
Okay.
we've talked about this.
So this sounds like it's kind of like a rent to own with a bailout clause, and Mr. Windle's helping us with the words to make that all smooth.
Well, then it's probably a little bit of news to him, but
It was on my radar. I just was waiting for direction as to what we were trying to accomplish.
according to Linda at our meeting, they had negotiations with the school district last year. I don't know if you guys that are on the committee know that, but that's what we were told, I was told. But anyway, this will be all new. So just looking for an idea what you guys think we need. I think 3 would be plenty, but whatever you guys want, but I would like to work. We've got about a week to try and get it taken care of, so. Questions on?
Mr. Gatchell?
We've walked in there, they've got some ideas on the other new wrench in there is, we've also, even though we had resolution at full county board to move ag extension to HHS, we are contemplating, because the addendum that there's a lot of stuff. I'm hoping that even if we can get our end done with the school district, that by June 1st, they can start measuring, getting ideas of what they need to start doing in July, August. Hopefully by then, we will have a new home for ag extension, either here or at Melville, but that is up, and that's gonna kind of play into the addendum possibly, too, maybe, but for now, I just want to get East Hall ready for the school district. They would like to have a June 1st notification. They could get by with a little bit later, but that, if we fall through and if they have to try and do something with Jefferson, they'd never have it ready by the 1st of September. So they're expecting 15 students. I don't think she came in and gave a presentation to the Buildings and Grounds Committee, Sherry Johnson. So they've got some pretty good ideas of perfect building because of the ag or the industrial arts area. They've got a cooking area, so they can use it for different, there's a computer area. So not a lot of remodeling the first year. And like he said, if it flops, then you don't know, but they're gonna take applications from all surrounding areas year one. So it isn't just gonna be the Richland School District from what they've told me. So, and it's just gonna be pull them out of a hat for the first year. So they're hoping it'll take off. A lot of positive feedback from anybody I've talked to, so. Yeah.
John?
Just on that same subject, but switching gears just a little bit, I was out at East Hall today and I met with Adam and toured the facility. And of immediate need out there is no longer anyone doing any cleaning out there. He asked me if the county had additional vacuum, that they'd be willing to do the cleaning if they had a vacuum. I checked with Randy today and Randy said he does not have an extra vacuum. So we have to figure that out. And the second thing is, there is no one now that it's been taken off the campus property. There's no one that's doing any mowing either. So those 2 issues we have to resolve immediately.
I found a guy to mow that. County shop's got a couple mowers.
Someone, and an operator?
They got an operator too.
Um,
And a vacuum.
Things are moving fast and changing It's like trying to hit a moving target, really, and,
So with this, if we get this done with the school district, then boom, the school district, the sooner we get this done, the less that we have to take care of. That's
Yeah.
one way to look at, I mean, we already pulled it out of the memorandum of agreement, so we need to move fast, and I am a little frustrated with this extension move, to say the least. I don't feel real comfortable changing the way we were going. I think we had a plan. I think we should go forward with the plan, and that's what it should be. I don't feel real comfortable with where that campus is going, and I don't want to move it twice, and I don't want to spend money twice to move it. So it's just my opinion on that. But
thanks.
If I can just add to that, my concern would be about moving them twice. But speaking with Adam today, he believes that if they move across the street, that it'll be two moves for them as well. That they would move into the property as it is now, and then there would be additional remodeling that would have to be done. So they would be moved somewhere in the building. At some point, remodeling would get done, and then they would have to move again. So he said in his mind, he thinks it's gonna be, two moves within that building. And on campus at Melville, we have no idea, how long they would be in there, so.
well, the only point I'll make is if I got to move a desk from here out in the hallway is much simpler than moving it to Melville and then moving it back over here at the end. So there's a lot of pushback on this, and for whatever reason, but I think we made our decision and we go forward.
Wasn't there also an issue with the networking and the IT in Melville?
We're, ask the question again,
Oh,
please.
sorry. I thought there was also a question about whether if the extension
Yeah.
moved to Melville, whether they would even be on the county IT connections.
Right, and this really is off agenda. We're not talking about that issue right now. But yes, to answer your question, yes. This was an East Hall update, and
So, yeah, what I'm looking for is what this committee would like to have, I'm gonna call it the negotiation team, or whatever we're gonna call ourselves. Suggestions from somebody. And I gave you I told you what the school board's doing, or the school district has three. If we have three, we have four, whatever, two.
I would make a motion that a negotiating team, we appoint interim administrator Hookerman, myself, Steve, who else? Mr. Wendell. Be appointed to handle negotiations with the school.
No second.
Okay, Brewer. Kui. Agreeable? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I will say, I will put for next week's, because we're dealing with East Hall yet, on my buildings and grounds, we will put on cleaning and mowing out there. Gosh. We'll get that much taken care of. So.
Okay. All right. I'd really like to talk about this the rest of the evening, but we can't because it's not on our agenda. Clean sweep grant application, and I believe Carla is going to address that.
So I'm looking for a motion to move this resolution onto county board to host a agricultural and household clean sweep in 2024. We're looking to start possibly doing this either yearly or every other year. It does have a matching grant. It is a matching grant, I'm sorry. So the amount is up to $24,000 that we could be awarded. The matching grant can be my time, the time that's worked, advertising, stuff like that. But I just want to make sure that everyone understands that if we go over, because there's no way to determine what we bring in, that we would come to county board looking for funding then out of the general fund to cover
We've done this
expenses.
before.
Yeah, one other time we did go over, yes.
We did go over.
Mhm. but we've had 3 since I've been here, and it was only 1. And just to clarify, I think part of the reason that happened is because for so many years, we did not do a clean sweep. So that compiles, and when that compiles over and over for years and years, there's more to bring in, and then it's more expensive. So if we can stay on top of this and do it yearly or every other year, I think we won't have to worry about
And
that.
our portion can be in kind, as they call it.
It can, yep. And then outside of that, if there's still anything that's owed, then obviously I would come back to you or in the county board
Okay,
then.
looking for a motion, Mr. Manning. Seconded by Mr. Gotchall. All those in favor of applying for the Clean Sweep Grant application, applying for the Clean Sweep Grant, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Future UW campus expenses funding source. Who wants to
I can do that, Mr. Chair.
broach that, please?
I think we talked about that just a little bit before. And I guess my recommendation to the committee would be that in our conversations, discussions, negotiations with the UW, that we request that all invoices come to the county so that we know that they get dealt with on a timely basis. And as far as where the funds come from, Derek, do you want to speak to that?
Well, we've already indicated that Fund 32 will be over, so you can continue to use Fund 32, and we can do a deficiency appropriation at the end of the year that would pull from the general fund. No one wants to hear that, but you know, right now I haven't had time to look any further, but I guess maybe it's hard to answer this question because we don't know what's going to happen, so I don't want to throw some random funding source out there that we really don't know yet. So I think the thing to note is that the expenses at the campus are going to continue, and we do have a fund set aside for them. There was $40,000 budgeted for 2023. In 2024, perhaps you want to look at that a little more closely. That number has been that number for a very long time. And I think, you know, we won't go into deferred maintenance, but I think John's point is very well taken. We need to get the billing situation figured out, and then you folks need to know that continual use of Fund 32 is only going to make that fund more negative at this point, and a deficiency appropriation will have to be made likely from the general fund should it continue that way, unless there is another funding source that we can come up with or look at.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Goy.
I would agree that it stays on Fund 32 so that we can track what we spent.
Right.
The deficiency report, the money's coming from, most likely it's coming from the general fund anyways, whether you do it now or you do it later, or if you steal from another fund, you're just moving it. But this way, at least we can track what we actually spent.
Absolutely. Yes, Mr. Gotchall.
And I don't know, will that, another thing, within that 46 pages, I imagine, Mr. Wendell, we might have an idea who actually, it's a good question, Tim, because when Mr. Carroll and I toured it, can't find any records, number one. This gentleman that currently is there is done June 30th. He's going to Baraboo. They're supposedly going to hire somebody. We may be finding somebody else to mow lawn as well there if Platteville fails, but we're hoping they'll be spelled out, and then hopefully Mr. Wendell gets a response from their lawyer, you know, before June 30th. So we've got 2 months.
There's a lot of lawn out there if you count the soccer field and all that, so.
I added it up, 12, 7, almost 20 acres.
When we were there in the walk, the guy we talked to said it takes him 4 days to mow it. And he's the only guy there right now.
Yeah.
I think down the road, I don't know if we truly get it back. I mean, it's gonna cost us some money, but I think we need to you almost hire somebody to go out there
Well,
to do
I asked
assessment.
the guy at that meeting, I said, do you plan to pay for utility? Well, yeah. I said, well, how about the mowing? And, oh yeah, Platteville will have to come up and do that. So what do you say?
All right, Mr. Chair. Do we have any unspent, unallocated ARPA money?
Well, unallocated, meaning there's nothing that's not apportioned out to other projects. So those projects, are in various stages of completion, but those funds have all been appropriated and, planned for other projects.
It would be only if they underspend what they were designated.
It started and we just take it.
Well,
There's that.
I've experienced.
Okay. Well, this is all stuff to think about.
Yep. Yep.
and Mr. Chair,
We'll keep moving.
and may just note that when Administrator Langreck and I spoke about this, or previous administrator, whatever, part of, I wanted to bring this forward too, obviously, because we were looking at these invoices and this was really meant to be more of a report and a cleanup item, if you will, like John said, just to let you guys know. So normally, this doesn't usually happen, but.
And it'll mean more work for you and your financial people, of course, but maybe not in the long run, probably. I don't know.
No, we'll work it out.
Mr. Manning?
A little off agenda, but as long as we're on the campus, I wonder if Josh could talk just a little bit about our bridges and if anything has changed with that.
Well, yeah, sure, fire away, Josh. I haven't been under those bridges, but I don't want to.
Well, the bridges have been an area of concern for quite some time because one is currently load posted at 10 ton and the other one I think is at 40 ton right
I
now.
don't think your mic's on there, buddy. Is it?
Okay.
Speak into it.
So what the two bridges are, they're both eligible to be replaced, but the problem is they sit on a private drive, which means the county has ownership of them. But because they're on a private drive, we cannot apply for funding. I've tried twice, failed twice. So at this point, you're kind of stuck in limbo to the point of either the city takes ownership of them, we can go that route, secure funding, or the county would have to look at pretty much ending up full dollar amount to rehabilitate those bridges. One of the bridges, as I stated, is currently load rated at 10 ton. The other one's at 40 ton. The nice part is there's two access points in there. So if emergency vehicles or anything does need to get in there, they can still access down in there. The only thing I wouldn't recommend doing is taking like a low boy with a heavy piece of equipment across the bridges. They're in rough shape, but they will hold up for a undesignated amount of time.
If you
Depending.
drive fast enough and get across before it
We
collapses.
could build a ramp. We could have fun, sell tickets. Yeah.
Oh, they're not good.
I would like to add that I did ask Mr. Palmer a year ago if he had an estimate of replacement costs on them, and he said it'd be in the neighborhood of $750,000 per brick.
Yeah, well, I figured $1 million, so.
It's yeah, with the current cost
Per
estimates,
bridge.
saying it's approaching over $1 million.
Okay, some more deferred maintenance. John? Steve? Hey. I think we haven't exhausted it, but,
Have we done anything on the agenda yet?
well, yeah, next thing is, we're gonna talk about table purchases for the county boardroom. And I thought this was off the agenda, but I see it's back on, so, or maybe I never took it off. Somebody want to speak to this?
I
Cheryl?
will speak
Barb?
to it, yes.
Okay,
So a quote was taken and approved at Public Works to have the county boardroom redone for 55,000.
go ahead.
55. Tables were not in there, so Marty asked me to look at tables and get them ordered. In the process of getting the table quotes, Barb said she may have other quotes coming in, but does not have them in hand, I believe, to review. So what I put them in your packet. The two I've been looking at, it's numbered 13BA and 13AA. The more expensive one does have electric built into the tables. But I wanted to present those, possibly contingent on these other quotes coming in that could have tables or may not have tables.
So what do you need from us, Cheryl?
You decide if you want to order either of, or approve either of these table styles contingent upon another quote coming in that does not have or does have tables. So
Right.
if MIS comes in with something that does have tables, we wouldn't order them, but if they stay with the current one that was approved at the meeting, they would need tables.
And the reason that we're asking is we don't want to be stuck without tables. And we're talking about narrower tables for this room. And they would face this area here. And,
So the tables for $74,000 are 18-inch by 60-inch. You cannot get electrical in an 18-inch table, so the ones that are a little more expensive, the $7,711 are 24-inch tables, but they do have the electrical built in.
okay, she said 74,000, but she meant 7,400 the first time.
The thousands on the brain.
You want me to tell them where we're at?
It's okay, they can split it out of theirs.
All right.
So we have to choose a style here? Or,
Well, sounds like to me, we're still waiting for bids, is that correct?
I had a conversation again today, there was confusion. But we don't have the final bid yet from the second vendor. So it's fine, if you guys want to approve those, that'd be great, because then I don't have to spend that money. All of the MIS funds, we can spend it out of whatever funds you guys have. And then I can utilize my funds for something else. So I'm good with this.
okay,
So just probably for Tim, and Gary wasn't there, but Steve and Mark were on, you were at the meeting, so we approved up to 55,000. She was kind of hoping that the tables would be in there, plus we're getting camera.
Yeah, the 55 does not include tables.
Okay. So either way, it's gonna be another added expense.
The other vendor may include the tables, but I don't have their bid to say that in writing yet.
And it could possibly be within the 55.
No, it is not.
Okay.
In the 55.
so somebody help me here. Somebody make a choice and make a motion.
So I think I've put some drawing or some photos in there of the tables I was looking at. As I said, if you go with the electrical, which is nice because people come in with dead batteries on their iPads all the time, then you could plug them in right at the table. They're the 24-inch wide though, versus I think these are 30, 32. Otherwise,
tables?
yeah.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you could go with 18 inches, a little narrower. You have more room, but you don't have electrical built in.
Mr. Carroll,
Has anyone actually done a floor layout to see exactly how this, I have not seen that.
I thought it was in the packet.
If you like,
All I'm saying is if 24-inch fits, then I don't care.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, I would ask Barb the question, what are your thoughts? What are your opinions on whether or not the tables should have the electrical outlets in them or not? Because it's not just getting the tables, then you have to wire the tables.
right, that wiring is not in the bid for mine, so that'll be an additional cost that you guys would have to figure out.
But I guess the question I have is, do you think that would be a worthy additional expenditure?
My question would go back to the committee, and how are you gonna pay for it?
Right.
I mean, that,
I don't know, that members of the committee do you have problems with your laptops
No,
expiring?
I would
Not
say no.
laptops, the tablets expiring?
Gary's works fine everywhere.
Just, I make sure it's charged to 100% when I come to a meeting, so,
Me personally, I don't feel we need the electricity in them.
no.
I mean, I like the idea of the 24-inch, but I don't need electricity.
Okay, so why doesn't someone make a motion then for the 18-inch version and we'll go with it.
I'll move to go with the 18-inch table.
I'll
Okay,
second.
second by Coy, motion by Carroll. With a contingency. Remember, there's a contingency if the next bid comes in including tables, then we'll back out of it. Okay, which could be any day, right?
it should be, they thought they'd have it to me yet today, and they didn't.
Okay, so all those in favor of buying 18-inch tables signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so you've got some direction there, Cheryl. 2023 squad purchase. Don't see the sheriff here.
Aaron's on.
I'm on, Marty.
Oh, Darren, hi.
CW Wallace is here.
Gotcha. So talk about the squad purchase, please, Aaron.
Yep, these are squad cards that we got short-term borrowing. We've got that way for the last few years. We've initially requested $200,000 for 3 cars. That wasn't enough for 3 cars. So we are doing 160 for 2 squad cars. And that
The price has gone up on cars apparently, right? Like everything else.
cars and the equipment you need to put in the cars.
Uh-huh. And this is already part of the plan, the short-term borrowing plan. So wasn't there a question, we got a squad car earlier than we thought we would or something?
Well, that's what we're asking for this now. In the past, they haven't come in until July. Actually, last year, I think it was September. We got the cars, and we got 1 car already sitting in the lot at Billback.
Okay. All right, so you've heard the explanation. It's part of our borrowing package. I'll entertain a motion.
Question.
Mr. Cooey, question.
Aaron, would that 40,000 buy the equipment that goes in the 3rd car, even though you can't buy the 3rd car? Or would you even do that?
We wouldn't buy the equipment ahead of time. I know that there was funds that were needed for a different project for the PSAP grant. And we had talked about using that additional funds towards that PSAP grant that was needed.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll take a motion. Mr. Williamson, seconded by Manning.
Question, Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Carroll.
I didn't catch it. Do they have quotes in hand or is this still an estimate?
Aaron, quotes in hand or an estimate?
We do have bids for the cars. The equipment, I know we just got an invoice from Barb for the computers and some other items that they get for us. It was a G-Tax, wasn't it, Barb?
Yeah, it wasn't an invoice, it was a quote.
Okay. And we're still waiting to hear back from GenCom for the build price, what they're going to charge us this year to actually build the cars. But based off of last year bids, we increased it just a little bit, and that's the number that the sheriff came up with.
Okay, all those in favor of a motion to go ahead and purchase the 2023, going from 3 to 2 now. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, Aaron. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 14, a discretionary use of year-end department budget surplus for the purpose of employee recognition and retention. Mr. Holcomer, do you have a comment here or a presentation?
I do. I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak on it, but I think 2 things. Number 1, I'm not the one that makes the decision. It's the committee and the board ultimately that need to make the decision. But from my past experience and my personal opinion, that first of all, your employees in any governmental body, your employees are the most valuable asset that you have. And I believe that the county should do whatever they can to make sure that employees are compensated for the work that they do, and that you look at comparables, and that when you can, you match, those comparables that you have. I think it's the right thing to do. And I know you have a compensation study or compensation plan that was several years ago and is outdated and has not been followed, that's created some problems. I know in this extremely difficult time of recruitment and retention, that a lot of counties and cities and villages are looking at ways to keep employees. But I think this is not the right answer. What it really does is it divides the county departments. It pits them against each other. And I can tell you in my conversations with, as I've been meeting with department heads and some other employees that have approached me in the now 2.5 weeks that I've been here, this is the number one issue that people are talking about, that county employees are talking about, is not what they're getting paid, but how some departments they feel are getting different treatment than others, and that the plans aren't fair and equitable. And it's creating very low morale. And if you want to try and reduce your workforce, the best thing you can do is keep morale low. So, you know, initially when I was told about this, I heard it was just for one department. And according to the resolution, what I read, it's for any department if there's a surplus at the end of the year. But that creates another problem because not all departments have the opportunity to increase their revenue. So you get to that issue where it's not fair and it's not equitable to all the county employees. You know, if this was a plan and you're going to give one-time bonuses and it was going to impact all the counties countywide, that would be a different story. I think the other thing that can happen when you do this is that potentially you could have departments that try and build their budget up. They intentionally try and increase their revenues, or you know, whatever they do, so that at the end of the year they can say, look, we have the surplus. Now we're going to go give bonuses. So my experience in the past, because we all know that dollars are not unlimited, they are limited. As long as the workforce, your workforce, as long as they know that there's a plan and you're trying to treat everybody fair and equitable, even if the pay isn't and the benefits aren't where they would like it to be, as long as there's a plan in place, and if you're going to have a compensation plan, that you follow the study, and that you make a commitment that you're going to keep up with the plan. That has not been done here. So it has really created problems, and it's hard to see in these times when I was a young guy and I first got involved in county government, people stayed in these jobs because that's what they're going to do and they're going to finish their career out. That's not the case now. That's not what happens. People are much more willing to get in their car, or even, for that matter, move to a different location and buy a home. And I don't think that that's what we want to see here. So my strong opinion, my strong recommendation is, I want you to have the conversation, because I think it's good to have that conversation, but I could not recommend moving forward with this action.
Okay, thank you, John. And I'll take some comments from the committee here. Please, Mr. Gotchel.
Yes, I was one of the friends that looked this. Yes, better. So I was one of the committee members that helped to bring this forward. If that is the feedback that we're getting from the workforce, that's simply not the intent. So I would be open to changing my perspective on that.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll?
My thoughts were more or less on the same lines as John's before he said anything. I just see a lot of potential for satisfaction, and there's different ways. Like he said, we're not even keeping up with the plan we'd wanted to. If we're going to do anything to try to improve retention and recruitment, let's move on that.
You.
I would agree with
Please.
Mr. Carroll completely. We got a plan and we can't follow the plan we have, so we need to fix that.
Mr. Manning?
Same.
Okay. And who's do we have there? Okay, since we have a proposed resolution before us, uh, we could take no action, or I think we need to probably take a motion here not to forward this resolution to the county board. Cooey, seconded by Gotchall. Any further discussion? What's before us? All those in favor of not forwarding the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you for your thoughtful comments and consideration. Number 15, okay, we did that, right? No, yeah, we did that. 16, approved contract for upgrade of tax collection software. And Mr. Even, the county treasurer, is here.
I am in the house. So those of you that sat in on the interview, the budget presentations last summer, this may be a bit of a refresher, but the current software that we use for our general cash receipting, so every penny that comes in from the departments, all of our tax collection, the generation of tax bills, and then the software that houses and maintains all of our property ownership valuations and assessment records is currently due to sunset. So essentially, we're just not going to be able to use it anymore. So this contract is to upgrade our current software with the same vendor we currently have to their newest version so that we can continue to function as a county. It is in the approved budget. We budgeted for this upgrade, and then going forward for the 24 budget, then obviously we'll have to budget for the ongoing maintenance, which we have been with our current software. So any questions on this? This will obviously need to go on to full county board, so I'm looking for approval to draft that resolution for the full board.
Questions for the county treasurer? Thank you, Mr. Cooey. He makes the motion, seconded by Manning. A motion to forward this for full board consideration. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We did it. Thank you, Jeff. Restructuring of maintenance department and job postings.
I'll start us out
Okay.
with the custodian leaving the courthouse, turning in her notice. We talked to Mr. Langrick, or Administrator Langrick, who was here at the time, and decided it could be, because it is in our strategic plan, to do more centralized maintenance by 2027. This was an advantage here to possibly do it or consider it in a small scale, doing HHS and the courthouse first and then graduating up. It also, and so we did send those job descriptions out to Carlson Detman. We got those back. In the meantime, we found that we may, and Randy has done some maintenance out at the campus. There was some concerns that that is not part of his job description. And so there could be a lot of discussion on this, on do we want to continue this? The plan was to do it in 2024, but we've got some immediate needs now. And all this is for discussion. Mr. Hokemer, do you have any comments on this?
I'm sure Randy isn't the one who said this isn't in my job description, but he's been very, he said, I'm a one-man show here, so how much can I do?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, my comments are related. Late this afternoon, I had a conversation with Trish, and then following that, I had a conversation with Randy. And on the agenda cover page, when we talk about the HSS custodian budget balance be transferred to the maintenance budget. So what Trish told me is that her recollection of the conversation was that Dennis has his salary and his benefits, and it would be her intent that those funds stay within the Human Services Department because they get some partial reimbursement for his costs. So what her thought was moving forward was that the salary and benefits would stay in her budget, but Dennis would then report to Randy. That for this year, the remaining funds, take the total amount, and Derek, you were there as well, so take the total amount, take Dennis's salary and benefits out, and the remaining is about $30,000. Some of that has been expended. And that, so what Tricia's thought was, what the remaining balance that has not been spent, that's for supplies and so forth, not wages and benefits, would be transferred over to Randy. Randy wasn't quite sure that that's how the conversation went, but he thought that, that was a potential. He was more concerned about the process, how we would actually make that work this year and transfer of money and so forth. So based on the conversation that we had late this afternoon, our recommendation, this is specific to Dennis's position, because we're all on board with the restructuring and centralizing that function, but with another unknown of the campus out there, we could be making a decision tonight and then have to change it once again. So our recommendation, and correct me if I'm wrong here, as far as Dennis's position, is that we're recommending you do not take action this evening, either to approve or deny. You can take action to table, or we just take no action. But on some of the other items in here, we do recommend moving forward. Correct, Cheryl?
We thought maybe the best thing may be move forward with the maintenance manager so that we can get him doing some more items that he's gonna be called on to do probably. And then look in 2024, then possibly looking at the maintenance technician, which we have it wrote. We would post the custodian position as it is tomorrow morning and try and get that filled. There's no range change. So in other words, the pay range will stay the same for the custodian when it come back. So even if we change the job description the first of the year, the pay won't change on that. The only one that would change would be the maintenance supervisor or manager.
So, and the thought would be moving Randy into the manager position, right?
Yes, and then posting the custodian as it is currently written, not with the new one.
Is moving Randy there, I see it's pay grade K, is that up
Yes, I think it's up to.
2? Probably not budgeted for.
No, it is not.
Dollar amount. You got it.
I do not have that number off the top of my head. I do not know.
If you give me a few minutes, I can maybe calculate just that. I won't have the FICA or the.
So while Cheryl is looking at that, I think the conversation that we would have regarding Dennis and the whole restructuring is if we can come up with a good plan and we can make that restructuring happen prior to January 1, we would like to come back and do that for you. If we can't, and to make everything extremely clean and no budget transfers and all that, we may come back and say, we believe it's best to make that switch effective January 1. But we would just like to have a little bit more time to explore that, especially based on the conversation that we have with Trish and with Randy this afternoon.
Does anybody know, or Tim, do you know how many hours he puts in over there? I mean, would he be available to come over here with his current workload? I have no idea.
I don't know the answer to that either. And I guess the follow-up question that I would have is if that in reality is what happens, does that have a negative impact on the reimbursement that Trish would get for her department?
Right.
My quick calculations in salary alone for a whole year, now I'm not prorating because we're into like 5 months, is $8,236.80. But then you've got to probably divide that by 12 times, and I can do that. About $4,804 for the remainder of the year.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Carroll.
Now, just to get this figured out for tonight, do we need to approve the revised, table?
Table?
Yeah.
we could do that with just doing the, whichever positions you want to change. So it would be the one from HHS this evening, and then whichever ones you pick to
I would just,
accept
it's
tonight.
maybe a minor thing, but maybe the description and the cost category would, department code might want to change then if the maintenance manager is doing more than just the courthouse. Right now, it just says courthouse.
Right.
Be a conversation with Derek tomorrow.
Yeah, I would just add that, I think this would be a move that would like centralize services and move in a direction that I don't feel like is fully thought out yet. So I would much rather just hash this out a little bit more and then make the change once instead of come back later. I think, I think we could go status quo for now for a little bit, but it'd be much cleaner, as John said, to have this all hashed out and included in the 2024 budget, right? Instead of doing it now and having to worry about all this movement of stuff. I think there's lots of pieces that, I don't want to say haven't been thought about, but appear to have come out of just a conversation this afternoon, off the cuff, right? So I think we just need to pause for a second because the centralization stuff, if it happens for this department, we've mentioned centralization of other departments, so I'd prefer to do it right the first way and just kind of pause for a second.
Mr. Carroll?
I understand Derek's concern, but in the meantime, we need to give Randy some cover if he's going to be working over on this building.
Mr. Manning? Oh, we gotta post something though. Don't we? I think we do that once. But I appreciate your motion. Come back.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just continuing Steve's point a little bit. So I've heard that we don't want to take action or it's not prudent to take action. I agree with that, but I'm unclear what the risk is. Someone's cleaning somewhere that they're not used to. Is that?
I can
Yeah.
speak on that. Randy it's not in his job description. If he was to get hurt out at the campus, what does insurance cover him? That's basically what it boils down to. And I believe Mr. Wendell said that day. Yeah, it's still it's a county building, so that part has been cleared up. I don't know. John, I think you were on the call that day as well, but is that the way you understood it?
Yes.
Randy's current job title is what?
Courthouse maintenance.
Courthouse
maintenance.
Courthouse maintenance.
House
Okay.
maintenance. We took the manager out of it when the last guy left. But I think now it's probably the time to put it back in. Okay, so what do we need tonight? Do we need, it seemed like we had to post a position, don't we?
Custodian, no matter what, will have to be posted.
Now, do we need action to do that?
No.
Probably not.
No.
Okay. So I'll go back to Mr. Manning then. What was your motion? No action. We can table.
What about, I'm just thinking out loud here, what if we only took no action on Dennis's, what impacts Dennis and Human Services and move forward with all the rest? I think that would be prudent to do.
So do you want to amend your motion a little bit? We haven't had a second yet. What he said.
I think, and I just want to reiterate, there's no one that I've talked to is against the restructuring. We all believe it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
We just.
But it
based
is
on-
going to be an increase in his position. So.
And we just want to make sure that we're doing it right, hopefully right the first time so that we don't have to amend it again and with changes that may be coming with UW campus. So, but I think all the rest, I think you should move forward on.
Okay, so you're making that motion.
I'll
Do
second.
we have a
for-
second?
I'll second
Mr.
for one more
Gotcha.
question.
Okay, yes, question.
The part that we're not taking action on is the custodian that's at HHS currently. Not increasing his duties to include this building.
Not moving him over here, right?
But we want to do that eventually once we've,
Within that motion, are we gonna move the dollar amount that you were suggesting, John, into Randy's budget? Or not, do you want to wait till
No.
January?
I want to wait.
Yeah, I
We,
agree.
we want to have that conversation with Trish and with Randy.
Yeah.
And Derek should be involved in that as well.
So what are we doing?
So-
because if we're not moving him into the position,
So-
then we're not paying.
There's two different things. There's moving Dennis over here and morphing it into the centralized department, which we don't have those details worked out yet. So those need to stop. But, if Randy's going to be responsible to look over more buildings than just the courthouse, as his job description currently reads as courthouse maintenance, then as you just said, he should be compensated. So Marty mentioned we did remove that title from the job description years ago, but do you want to then put that back in to allow Randy to have that responsibility then when you do centralize those services at some point later on down the road? It's the cleanup of
Okay,
that,
so
correct?
Still not clear, right? So I get the first part. I'm not worried about Dennis. That's not, where I'm at was Randy. Are we moving him? Do we want to move him to the manager position now? And then my second part of that is, if we move him to the manager, then he should be paid as a manager.
Yes,
Is that what we're doing?
I believe
That is.
That's, I was
way.
getting confused that we weren't gonna do that, or we were gonna change him and not pay him or something. But if we're gonna move him, then we need to pay him.
we've already imposed on him
I
and
agree.
more than we should have, but
And this is
by
why we wanted to
necessity.
pause with all of this stuff and
It's
just
just
figure out
simple
one
stuff.
thing and then do the rest.
We're
Right.
taking care of Randy's position, but the rest of it, we're not.
Right.
That's the easiest way to put it.
Other than posting, which we would have to
We
do
have
anyway.
to anyway.
And the only difference in that job description, the custodian would be taking out some outside work, which she doesn't do anyway, I think was like lawn care and flowers, and then adding the HHS building, so that can be done at a later date.
One thing we want, just when you're going forward with that, remember that we get free money, for lack of a better word, for having it over there.
Right,
Whatever that is, but it is something, right?
yeah.
And that was John's point, to talk to Tricia, because it seems like there was a misunderstanding or various conversations interpreted differently. So to have everyone sit in one spot to make sure everyone's on the same page. So if it is tied to a funding source, we're not losing money by a centralization of a department that maybe didn't need to be centralized or whatever, but none of those things. It seems like it's just not clear enough to move forward, and I don't feel comfortable personally with that.
I just want to take care of Randy, I guess.
Correct.
So, Mr. Gutschall?
Randy's courthouse maintenance, and we're changing that title to maintenance manager now.
Yeah,
Okay, so I would semantics, but I think post our administrator model, we've made a practice of not naming people to promotions. So I guess I would recommend that we vote to create that position and have Administrator Holcomer name Randy to that position. I don't think.
I like that. I like that. As a way to accomplish Mr. Manning's motion. So he's accepting that as an amendment to his motion.
I'll second that amendment.
Okay, and all in favor of the amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so now we have the motion, which is what he said. But basically, it's moving Randy into a managerial position and yeah. Gee, Randy, good news and bad news. You've now got the entire county to maintain and, okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And for all of you that don't know, Randy is the inventor of the bat reclamation device, which is a vacuum with a 30-foot piece of PVC on it that will suck bats from the ceiling if necessary. Of course, they're rehomed into a more suitable environment. Okay. We did 18, we're down to 19. Discussion and possible action on progressing 30-year employees to step 8. And I think we talked about this at a previous meeting.
Several times.
And Mr. Cooey said, I believe, if memory serves, if we're gonna do this for one, we ought to look at everybody in the county that's at this level. And maybe Cheryl and John can give us more information.
Melissa had made the motion at the last meeting to look at it again at budget time, so I'm putting it back on, so it is close to budget time. You can give your department heads direction in 2024 to budget for their 30-year employees. I did put in how many employees would move to 30 years in the next 2 years, so those numbers are in your folder, but I can review those if you'd like.
Please. Got them?
Soon, soon. It's opening. I think it's opening.
So this is the one with the $6,400 for the 30-year employees. Cheryl?
Yes, it is, yep. I didn't open up the right one. From employees to step 8, found it. So this came about because of the sheriff's department. For 30 years, we have one already at step 8, and that was as of today. We have 10 that would go up 1 step, 0 that would go up 2 steps, 0 would go up 3 steps, 6 would go up 4 steps. In June of this year, we'll have 1 that would go up 1 step. September of this year, we have 1 that would go up 1 step. February of 2024, we would have 1 that would go up 1 step, 1 that would go up 3 steps, and then in November of 2024, we would have 1 that would go up 1 step. So that gets you out through 2024, so you know your counts and your dollar amounts.
Comments, your thoughts, please? Carol,
Yeah.
Mr. Carroll?
So in the last budget cycle, we looked at trying to get closer to Carlson Detman. We did a 5-year plan with showing the increases we were going to try to lock in. How does this overlay that, or I'm not sure how this interacts with what we already did.
Came from the sheriff's department, them asking to have their 32-year employee that they wanted to take her up to step 8, and it was decided that if you take 1 up, you have to take them all up. It came back to at least 2 meetings, and at the last one, Melissa Luck made the motion to, if you're going to do it, let's do it at budget time. So I'm bringing it back because we're close to budget. And you can continue the discussion.
Yes,
But-
Mr. Cooey.
So this, what we see here for budget time would be next year.
Yes,
So
unless
is
they're,
that the one, the as of today?
it's still as of today, but we don't know, we can't calculate in raises. That could happen at the beginning of 2024. So this is the cost as of today with the current salaries.
So the 6,400 is the total on the very bottom, or the 26,000?
Both of
It
them.
would be,
Both of
yep, the
together?
total of all of them,
But-
yeah. Well, it would be the 64,000 or 6,400. I got that 1,000 in my head. But in June, then that would be the year total that would be added on. September, that would be a year total that is added on, and it's through 2024. And that's the year total. I did not prorate those.
But Cheryl, we have to do the box right above it if we're gonna make this
Yes, I'm sorry.
reality
Yes,
too.
yes.
Like,
So it'd be all of those.
that's now.
And those numbers, and maybe I understand it wrong, but if they, which they should be getting a raise according to what, so those numbers could actually be a little bit lower. With the raise, may put them in another step or not?
It would talk-
The raise was 3% across the board, or 5% across the board. See, we didn't do step stuff.
That's right.
We're never gonna get to the step thing. It just keeps reoccurring over and over and over again. We're never gonna get to the step thing, and we're trying to work around it because we just haven't committed to do the damn step thing. It's very frustrating.
No money.
And I understand that, but we just move it around is all we,
And a comment I would make is that some jobs are worth what we pay. I mean, just because you've been in a job for a long, long time doesn't mean you should get a raise based on your longevity.
I agree with that completely, Marty, but the problem here is we're not at the top of their rate, of their pay grade. That's where our problem is we're not at the top of the pay grade. If you don't want to raise 5% for the next year, that's a different conversation. The problem is we've never gotten the people to the pay grade of the study that we said we were going to do when I started on the board, and it's going to be 6 years at this end. That's where I struggle. This is, I think, is probably the biggest complaint that I hear from just move me to the step I'm supposed to be on. Well, if you're at 30 years and you're not at step 8 yet, that's a problem in my opinion. That's a big problem because I don't know anybody that would take a job that's saying it's going to take you 30 plus years to get to the top of your pay grade. I don't know anybody to do that. I look at what we do in factories, and mind you, that's different because we generate revenue and do things, we have ability to control that, but it's a year they're at the top of their pay grade. And I know we don't have any money, but if you've been here 30 years and you're still not at the top of the pay grade, shame on us. And I know it doesn't help the rest of them, but it's probably the best thing we can do going forward. At least when every of them get to 30 years, they're going to be at the top of the pay grade. It's sad to say.
I would just add to that, Mr. Chairman, I wholeheartedly agree. The real issue that we're seeing is when municipalities are losing employees, they're filling that with new employees that are going to make just as much or more than that person that just left. So, my comments here are very much along the same comments that I made before regarding the other resolution. And I think this has to be part of the overall plan for the county to take another look at compensation and how you're going to deal with that moving forward. And again, I think if you have that plan and the commitment is there, you are going to pacify a lot of employees if they know that you're going to deal with the issue. So I think it's part of the broad overview of what you need to do here in the near future. And I know it costs money.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carroll.
I just need a little explanation on what the 15 plus years, now 20 plus years numbers represent. I'm not clear on that.
Yeah, so when we started looking at this, I knew those questions would come up. So what is it going to cost if we put everybody that's been here 15 years to step 8? What's it going to cost if we move everybody that's been here 20 years to step 8? So that's your calculations and your counts for 15, 20 years. And you could do that too.
Okay, so I think we can probably not take action on this unless you want us to give an advisory.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that we turn this one down just like we did the previous resolution, and the reason being, I think is this isn't equitable to the entire. I mean, if we're gonna take that lane, we're gonna stick in that lane. That this is not equitable to all the employees.
Okay, motion, don't do it. Do I have a second? 40 seconds. But we'll look at it at budget time. We have to.
I would agree. We have to find a way to fix this. The 5% I get was, whatever the number was, is a great idea. Yes, to give everybody a raise. But all I've heard about is this pay grade thing, and I'm tired of it. We got to get them to where the pay grade is, or we got to do something different to say that pay grade is irrelevant. Something like John's saying, we got to come up with a plan to fix this, and it should be one of the top things on the budget.
Okay, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion not to do this, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. Update to the staff authorization table.
So I think just from all the changes that have been made here today, it will be the maintenance manager and the HHS position. Will just be the changes to the authorization table.
We've already done that. So I'll take a motion then to have Cheryl update the table. Gotcho, Williamson, all those in favor?
I just again want to make sure Derek's going to have an issue if, depending on how we describe Randy, because it still says courthouse.
Yeah.
Issue,
It's just the bucket, it comes out as.
yeah,
line item,
right, yeah, I won't have an
If you
issue
can
with
work
that.
with it, then that.
Yeah, well, that's another reason why I'd like to have a discussion to make sure we're understanding the same thing. So yes, that's fine. We can, it's fine.
All right, permission then, we're giving Cheryl, update the staff authorization table, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Future agenda items. Mr. Carroll.
Yeah. I don't know where things stand with the tower project. I wonder if we could have an update on exactly where that stands. I went and looked in the public safety folders. I didn't see any kind of reports or anything, and I just,
If you view the meeting from the last one, Mike Day gave an update. And if you attend Friday, he's gonna give another update.
well, all right, look, I didn't see it. I'll look again, but this committee should also get an update in our meeting.
Okay. So we'll add that to our agenda for an update. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, I think we should start talking about the step increase now or in June. In our 5-year plan, we have salary increases that are, to Mr. Cooey's point, are not step increases. So we should start talking about that.
How do you want it described?
I don't know what, we gotta figure out how to get to the top of the step.
We're just gonna, if it's the same as, I mean, we're just gonna get to it and say, well,
Well, I think what Cheryl's put together is take it down. Yeah, it's got some numbers on it that are they show us it's $100,000 to get people in 15 years up there. So what is it? Okay, so first, how long should it take to get to step 8? That's a good answer to a question.
Compare other counties.
Whatever the case may be there. And then what does it cost when we find out what that time frame is? And then we gotta figure out how we're gonna get there, and there you go. Because what happens, you know what happens as well as I do. We can't get somebody hired. We change that to a different step we hire them at. So we got people that we've hired that are already making, if not the same or more than people that have been here. And I hope to God they haven't been here for 10 years and they're getting paid less than the person we hired off the street. Right. And I'm afraid that's already happened, is what I'm afraid of. And I know it's a problem. It's probably $200,000 a year, really. But if we got them to their steps, if it's gonna cost us $200,000 to move them up 5%, or it costs us $200 to get to the top of the step, if we get them to the top of the step, that's a win for the county. And then going forward on how much we can give every year, then you're already, at least we got them to the step, or we got a plan to get to that step. And the plan can't be 10 years down the road.
we'll have this on our agenda in some form next time. I want to thank you all for your thoughtful diligence and thoughtful comments. This committee is a real source of pride. And Mr. Manning, it's time. Move to adjourn, second. Mr. Cooey, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.